You know, I didn't start out to be in the gun business. I never intended to choose it as a career. I've been a gun nut my whole life, and I finally got a chance to really get serious about it as a hobby. And I guess the career, the business ended up choosing me. Final! It was mid-1994, and I'd been working my first job. I just graduated at University of South Florida with a BSME, and I was working at a company that manufactures flight simulators, and as cool as that sounds, I got bored. Years before, I had taken a machine shop class in college, and I wanted to apply what I'd learned there to actually building guns. I had a welder that I bought from a coworker, and an old manual lathe and a mill, and I set them up in my garage, and started making some of the ugliest, nastiest little guns you'd ever seen with this cheap welder and the cheap equipment.
That's the screw. It's ground down to be just a firing pin on the other end. It's just standard tubing, actually. Comes the right size for it. 12 gauge.
Damn. There we go.
Unadulterated round, that was all shot.
I ended up moving up to better equipment within a year or so, and in 1996 I decided to start getting serious, and I incorporated Serbu Firearms Inc. on June 21st, 1996. I applied for my Class 2 manufacturing license, and like a lot of small Class 2 shops, I started up building machine guns up from part sets. It was a great learning experience. One of the best things you can do for your design skills is actually seeing what's been done before. I mean, it's pretty hard to design a gun in a vacuum. If you've never seen a gun before, you can come up with some pretty crazy stuff. And of course, playing with these machine guns was great fun. In my mind, nothing builds design skills like actually knowing how to make the stuff you design. You know, I didn't start Serbu Firearms Inc. with some master plan like, you know, some business whiz. Back in the 90s, I stumbled across a Usenet news group called rec.guns, and through that connection, I was approached by some people with this secret private email list called the NFA list. And through the list, I made some incredibly valuable contacts and also got help and inspiration for my first products. A lot of Class 2 manufacturers are just starting out. I made silencers, more technically or appropriately known as suppressors. My first official product on the market was the Cyrus suppressed Mark II Ruger pistol. Through the NFA list, I'd met Joe Godini. Back then, he was a suppressed Mark II guru. I visited him in Georgia in the summer of 1997, and he showed me how to make them. When I got back to Tampa, basically I ran with Joe's design, but I had to make it a little more unique because there were so many similar products out there. So I machined flutes into the suppressor tube, and they sold really well because of that, in spite of the fact that there might have been competitors out there that had better functioning guns. And this showed me early on that looks matter, even on something that's supposed to be a tool. Those flutes didn't do a damn thing for function, but they sure helped sales. I made just over 100 of the Cyrus pistols in my garage and stopped making them in early 2000. Not too long after introducing the Cyrus pistol, I came out with a rifle version based on the Ruger 1022 called the Cyrus 1022. But it didn't have the flutes on the suppressor, it didn't sell that well, and I think there were only about 20 of them made. Then along came the Super Shorty. Oh. The Super Shorty came about because one of my buddies, yes, a fellow NFA lister, I owed him some money. He asked me to make him the shortest Mossberg 500 shotgun that I could possibly make, and he wanted to have a fold-down front grip. And I said, all right, sounds good, but It didn't really sound good. I thought it was such a dumb idea at the time, it took me a year to get it made. But once people saw it out there on the internet, and he was showing it around a little bit, it just took off. People love the thing, and you know, joke's on me. I thought it was a dumb idea, but we've got thousands of them out there now. We started off making the Super Shorty based on the Mossberg shotguns, but after a couple of years and a lot of requests, we ended up making them on the Remington 870s as well. Now, I've always been a big video game player, and I think that probably counts for at least an extra year I spent in college. And it was pretty cool to see the Super Shorty appear in several video games over the years. Somewhere along the way, we sold some of the guns to a couple of the Hollywood prop houses. Super Shorty's been in about, I don't know, 5 or 6 pretty major motion pictures. Sold some to the US Army and a handful to the King of Jordan, and I'm especially proud of that. The Super Shorty, sawed-off shotgun of kings. The US Army's got them. They're really amazing. I never would have thought they would have taken off like that. Like a lot of gun guys, I'd always wanted the biggest and baddest gun, and of course that's 50 BMG. I think of 50 BMG as this. If it were compared to a vehicle, it would be a cross between an Indy car and a freight train. Fast and accurate, tons of energy. Awesome. There weren't that many choices out there in the mid-90s. There was the Motti Griffin and its knockoff called the LAR Grizzly. I didn't like the looks of them. I didn't like the shell holder type action. They were very heavy. Back then they were around $4,000, way overpriced. And so I decided, hey, why don't I just design my own? I guess it was about June 21st, 1999, I heard about the Military Sniper Weapons Act. It sought to ban the 50 BMG rifle in the US for civilian sales, and it basically changed everything. So all of a sudden now there was a panic for 50 caliber rifles. And so I went from my plans of building this big elaborate semi-automatic to let's get something out as fast as possible. I sat down that night and worked for almost 35 hours straight and came up with a design for the single-shot BFG-50. Previously, for another NFA lister, I designed a stippled trigger group that was essentially an AR-15 lower, minus the magazine well and buffer tube. And I just took that as my starting point for the BFG-50, which is why it's hammer fired, whereas every other bolt-action rifle in the world virtually is striker fired. I think from design to getting a working prototype firing, I think was 60 days. I started showing it around and got some interest, and I decided, hey, you know what? I can make a go of this. Let's get in production. Our initial batch was, I think, 50 guns for $995. Yeah, it sold out almost instantly. I learned some really valuable lessons back then. I figured I'd be delivering the first guns within 60 days, and it took 9 months to get those first guns out. And there was definitely some internet backlash over that. Luckily, the guns performed well and our reputation grew. I don't think an unknown gun company could do what we did without the perfect storm of stupid legislation, the internet, and fortunately a good design. We've got nearly 2,000 BFG-50 rifles out there now, and the current design is nearly unchanged from the original. So BFG-50 is rolling along, and after a few years I wanted to get back to my original design, which was the semi-automatic 50 caliber. And between when I first started playing with it back in the mid-90s to 2003 when I got back to it, I'd gone from using a crappy 2D CAD system to a 3D solid modeler, and man, the difference is amazing, and it's definitely the way of the future. 3D solid models can go directly from the CAM program, and from there directly to the CNC machines to make parts. I designed the BFG-50A to use existing M82 magazines, but other than that, there were no constraints. My design goals were simple. The gun had to be accurate, dependable, lightweight, and well, look cool. Of course, I made it gas operated with a fixed barrel. Trying to make a rifle accurate with a moving barrel is nearly impossible. Same with having a very effective muzzle brake. We can have a really great muzzle brake and it won't slow this recoiling barrel down. If you have a brake this good on a recoil operated gun, it won't even function because it'll stop the barrel from coming back. Another great thing about having a fixed barrel is that the gun is unaffected by the addition of a suppressor. The BFG-50A's gas system is a direct impingement type and uses a gas tube that's similar to what's used on an M16. Unlike the M16 though, the gas isn't ported to go inside the bolt carrier and push on the back of the bolt. It just goes into a blind hole in the bolt carrier like a Swedish Jungmann or its copy, the Hakim. The French MAS 4956 uses a similar gas system, much cleaner than the M16 type. Now the BFG-50A has a fairly standard 3-lug bolt, what's called a sliding plate extractor, dual ejectors, but what's unique about it is that the lug surfaces are cut on a helix. And that means that when the bolt locks into the barrel extension, it's actually screwing itself in. So not only do we get away with using a tighter chamber than would otherwise be used in a semi-automatic gun, you've got a system which is much more tolerant of dirt and out-of-spec ammunition. I should add that every material chosen for this gun was the ideal material for its purpose. No material was chosen because it would save money and make this gun more profitable for us. You know, in the grand scheme of things, using the absolute best steel versus the crappiest steel, it's, you know, pennies per pound. So, you know, we don't care about the extra pennies. We just want to make something good. Again, certainly we could have used some fairly exotic stuff like titanium and carbon fiber for many parts, but then the price goes way up. That being said, we'll most certainly be offering optional parts made from these materials in the future for those people who've just got to have it.
Is that fun?
Around 30 years, guys here and there have been trying to come up with another viable 50 BMG semi-automatic rifle. And the best they ever seem to do is copy a gun which came out in the 80s, that gun itself being a copy of a World War II Russian anti-tank rifle. Neither it nor the 5 clones that came after it worked very well, because none of them are on the market today. The BFG-50A represents the first time in history, at least US history, that a degreed mechanical engineer / gun designer sat down by himself and said, you know, I'm going to design a semi-automatic 50 caliber rifle. And because in this case, that designer, myself, owns the company, doesn't have to answer to any bosses or any committees or anything, I got to make the thing exactly the way I wanted it. And no one's ever shot a gun like this before. Even though it's very light for what it is, the gas operation, the excellent muzzle brake, and the hydraulic buffer combine to give you an incredible shooting experience.
Oh, that's lovely.
Feedback from our first customers echo this. They love their BFG-50As. And all modesty aside, I think it's going to prove to be the best gun of its kind in the world.